Hello and welcome. I'm Matt G, and I study and design tabletop role-playing games and other story games. I'm going to introduce you to the 5 methodologies I'll be using to demonstrate how story games work to get you to create a story. Using language and pictures to convince people to do things is called rhetoric. 4 types of rhetoric go into story games. The 3 I'll be using are world building, procedural, and instructional. The 4th, promotional, is to convince you to purchase and play the game. What made you buy your last role-playing game? For many, it started with seeing Dungeons and Dragons played in the television shows series Stranger Things. Maybe you want to watch a review. Maybe you were asked by a friend to join a group. But maybe you picked up a book in the store and looked it over, looked at the cover, read the blurb on the back. Maybe you flipped through the book and were impressed by it. These are all parts of promotional rhetoric, but it all starts with the book, that image, and that blurb, and ends with you playing the game. Their goal is to make the game exciting, to prime your imagination, often by showing you things that are similar to other stories you've consumed. It usually does this by hinting at the setting, promising more inside. That more, the actual setting, is mostly presented through world-building rhetoric. The world, as I call it, doesn't have to be an entire world. It can range from a single room to an entire universe, or even a dimensions. Some games focus more on characters' perceptions of the world, while others establish many details about the game's reality through descriptions, pictures, and stories. Either way, settings have to leave room for the players to tell their stories. World-building rhetoric presents alternative ways to see the world, and good settings often do this through procedural rhetoric. Procedural rhetoric was first coined by Ian Bogost in his book Persuasive Games. It covers life lessons learned while playing the game, but it also applies to imaginative players' simulated training exercises. While originally described from the player's point of view, procedural rhetoric can be deliberately designed into a game. So, for example, Android has a movement called Humans First. They protest against the recent inclusion of clones and bioroids within the Android Shadow of the Beanstalk setting. And those are types of characters. They're not the only types of characters. They're just 2 of many. But they are types of characters that you can play. So, procedural rhetoric needs to manifest through both setting and rules to really count. Instructional rhetoric covers how most story games work. It suggests tips and tricks to make storytelling easier, and despite claims by GURPS and similar games, instructional rhetoric applies structure to the setting. For example, rolling a character sheet, rolling a 3 dice in GURPS doesn't really affect each other from roll to roll to roll. So, if this is the dice, I roll them, and successful rolls are not modified by the previous ones, usually. Dread, on the other hand, not only does it connect the individual actions by assuming that you are pulling blocks from a tower. It connects actions from the entire group. So if you pull out a piece, put it on top, that means a successful action in Dread. Another factor to consider is organization and complexity. Story games usually take book form, and thus knowing how to read and navigate reference manuals it's an important prerequisite skill. The speed at which people can look up information contributes to how quickly the story flows or not. This is all captured by rhetorical structure theory. Developed in the 1980s to help computers learn languages, it has since been applied to discourse analysis. Ultimately, the narrative should be interesting, but uninteresting, confusing, or otherwise bad stories are still stories. My goal is not to judge the techniques used, but to explore how they work. Judging them comes later and involves comparing story games. We're nowhere near that yet. So, the astute among you may have realized that these methodologies can be applied to other games. Reward yourself 50 experience points if you realize this. The even more astute among you may realize that these methodologies can be applied to other things other than games, such as technical manuals. Reward yourself another 50 experience points if you did. Anyways, I need to describe each methodology and actually analyze some games, but these are both topics for later videos. Until next session.